Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. Before we begin, take a quiet moment and ask yourself something you might have been avoiding for a long time, and answer it honestly without rushing past it or hiding behind familiar habits that keep you distracted from your own thoughts. Have you ever reached a point where everything felt so heavy that even simple things like getting out of bed, replying to a message, or smiling at someone started to feel like tasks your mind just didn't want to carry anymore, as if something inside you had slowly gone quiet without asking for permission? Not in a way that anyone else could clearly see, but in a slow and almost invisible way, where you keep showing up in your life while a part of you quietly wonders what the point of all this effort really is. Because there is a certain kind of tiredness that sleep does not fix, and it is not the kind that comes from working too hard or staying up too late, but the kind that builds over time when life keeps asking things from you while giving very little back in return. And if that feeling sounds familiar in a way that is difficult to explain, then this message is meant for you, not to fix everything instantly, not to promise easy answers, but to sit with you for a moment in a way that feels honest and real. There are people who wake up every day and carry a weight that nobody else seems to notice, and they still try to be present, while quietly feeling like they are falling behind in a race they never understood in the first place. Sometimes the struggle is loud and obvious, like failure, rejection, or loss that everyone can see and react to. But more often, it is quiet and internal, like feeling stuck while everyone else seems to be moving forward, or trying your best and still feeling like it is never enough. And over time, that quiet struggle starts to change the way you think, because when effort does not lead to the results you hoped for, the mind begins to question not just the situation, but your own worth within it. You start to wonder if maybe you are the problem, if maybe you are not good enough or smart enough, even though you have been trying harder than most people around you realize. This is where something important needs to be understood, because what you are feeling is not always a reflection of your ability, but often a reflection of how long you have been carrying things without rest, without support, and without space to process what has been happening to you. The philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And while that sounds powerful, it also reveals something difficult, because when that sense of why begins to fade, even small challenges can start to feel overwhelming. And that is what many people experience without realizing it. Not a lack of strength, but a loss of meaning, where life becomes a series of tasks instead of something that feels connected to who they are and where they are going. Think about how often you keep going, not because you feel motivated or hopeful, but because stopping feels even more uncomfortable, as if you are moving forward simply because you don't know what else to do. There is also a pattern that quietly builds in moments like this, where the mind begins to focus more on what is missing rather than what is still present, because the brain is naturally wired to notice problems more than progress. It is the same reason losing something small can feel heavier than gaining something of equal value, because survival once depended on paying attention to what could go wrong, and that old system still shapes how we think today. But in a modern world where threats are rarely life or death, that same system can turn inward, making you more aware of your mistakes, your delays, and your unmet expectations than your growth, your effort, or your resilience. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to build a version of yourself in your mind that feels smaller than who you actually are, because you are measuring your life only by what has not worked yet. There is also something else that happens when someone starts to lose hope, and it is not always visible from the outside, because they don't suddenly stop everything and give up. Instead, they become quieter, more distant, less expressive, and more careful with their expectations, as if they are trying to protect themselves from being disappointed again in the same way. They still care, but they care differently now, in a way that is less open and more guarded, because hope once felt like something that led to pain rather than possibility. But here's the part that often gets overlooked, because even in those moments where it feels like nothing is changing, something is still happening beneath the surface that you may not fully see yet. The philosopher Viktor Frankl wrote about how people can find meaning even in the most difficult conditions, not because the situation becomes easier, but because the way they relate to it begins to shift over time. And that shift does not happen all at once, and it does not come from forcing yourself to feel positive or pretending everything is okay when it is not, but from quiet moments where you choose to continue, even when it feels like nothing is guaranteed. These actions may seem small, almost insignificant compared to the bigger picture of your life, but they are not, because they begin to rebuild something that feels lost. There is also something important about understanding that life does not move in straight lines, even though we often expect it to, because we are taught to believe that effort should always lead to progress in a clear and predictable way. But real life is rarely that simple, and progress often happens in ways that are not immediately visible, like learning from a failure that only makes sense later, or growing through a difficult period that once felt pointless. This does not mean everything happens for a reason in a comforting or easy way, but it does mean that your current position is not a final judgment on your future, even if it feels that way right now. Because the truth is, many people who once felt completely lost did not suddenly find clarity overnight, but slowly built it through moments where they chose not to give up, even when giving up felt like the easier option. And while it might not feel like it yet, the version of you that keeps going, even in small ways, is already doing something important, something that future you will understand more clearly than you can right now. So, if you find yourself in a place where everything feels uncertain, where progress feels slow, and where hope feels distant, then maybe the goal is not to solve everything at once, but to stay present long enough for things to begin shifting again. Because sometimes the most important change is not something you can see immediately, but something that is quietly building within you, waiting for the right moment to show itself. And one day, without realizing exactly when it happened, you may look back and notice that the version of you who felt lost did not disappear, but slowly transformed into someone who understood more, carried more, and kept going anyway. So for now, just hold on to this one thought, not as a promise, but as a possibility that is still open, that where you are right now is not where your story ends, no matter how convincing it may feel in this moment. And, if even a small part of this resonated with you, then stay with that feeling, not to fix it immediately, but to understand it a little better, because sometimes understanding is the first quiet step towards something new. And if you've ever wondered why certain emotions feel so strong, or why some days feel heavier without a clear reason, there's often a deeper story behind it, one that began much earlier than you think. I made a video that explores this in a way that might help you understand yourself on a deeper level. So, if you want to understand why you can't remember certain parts of your childhood, watch that video next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.